Hi guys, so today I want to show you how to make this beautiful Petite scarf. That's how I'm gonna call him. He's originally inspired by the knitted Sophie scarf. So it's actually a knitting pattern that I was inspired by, and I wanted to recreate him in crochet. Here you can see I already made him with this beautiful kid silk yarn I used here. It's two strands that I have worked with here and a 2.5mm hook. So if you want to use this specific yarn, this is how you do it. You use two strands, a 2.5mm hook. I used this Tulip Japan hook, and yeah, I think I used less than one skein of yarn. So doesn't it look beautiful? But for the video I want to use different yarn because this one here is definitely a little bit more difficult to work with, especially with the 2.5mm hook. What you're gonna need is a scissors, definitely a stitch marker, very important here. Maybe even want to use two, because you have to really keep track of the stitches. Then if you're using this yarn, you use two strands and a 2.5mm hook. For this yarn here, I'm using a 3.5mm hook, 3.5, and yeah, I think that's pretty much it what you need. So I would actually recommend, if you have it, a hook that has a little bit pointy top here, because with the stitches, the kind of stitches we are making, it's easier to get under them from underneath. So that's what I would recommend if you have a pointy hook and 2.5mm. But of course the hook size always depends a little bit on the yarn we are using. So today I will use this yarn, which is way more clear to see what I'm doing, and it's also way more beginner friendly. So let's start here with an example. I will not show the whole process because it takes too much time. I will just show you the basic pattern. We will start with a normal slip knot at the beginning. I'm using a 3.5mm hook. I'm actually not sure which yarn this is. I think it's some merino yarn from Hobby. Okay, so we made the slip knot. Now we're gonna do 3 chains, and now we're gonna make in the second chain from the hook a slip stitch, and in the other one also a slip stitch. Then you make a chain to turn and turn your work. As you can see, we're working in rows. Now you go in the front loop, make a slip stitch, and in the second loop also make a slip stitch. Now we have 2 rows. Okay, keep counting them. Made 1 turning chain and another slip stitch. As you can see, to get into the slip stitches it's a little bit more challenging, so we will try to keep them as loose as possible. Now I'm at 3 rows. I'm just continuing to do the same. Always go on the front loop, make slip stitches, 4 rows. We're already working up a little piece here. This yarn works really well. 5, 6, 7, no, 6, and now comes 7. So Now we made 7 rows. As you can see, they are not easy to detect where the rows actually are. Even for me, it's basically impossible to see where the rows are. So keep counting them in your head, or even make a list to mark every row, because later the rows will take more time per row. Now you can count them a little bit easier, but later it will be more difficult to keep up with them. So now I made 7 rows of front loop slip stitches. Now I make another turning chain, and now I will start with an increase. Okay, in the first stitch I make 2 slip stitches in 1 stitch. I know they can be a little bit tricky, but you can do it. Slip stitches just need some time to practice, you know. And now, very important, we are gonna mark here where we made our increase, because we are only increasing on one side every time. And you have to remember which side you increased on. Okay, that's why we are putting the stitch marker, and of course you want to remember where your increase was. Now we are crocheting back into the next front loop, 1 stitch, 1 in the next, and then we have increased to 3 stitches. Okay, so now this was round 7. The increasing round is number 8, and now this row again here is number 1. So we're starting again from number 1, because we are going up all the way to 7 again. Okay, so this was 1, row 1 with 3 stitches, and now I made row 2, three, 4, 5. This yarn is so nice to work with. 6. Oops. 7. Okay, now you can see we have reached another 7, or not see. And now we have to do the increase. You see, now when I make the increase, it will be on the same side. So everything is correct. We're making the increase in row number 8. 2 slip stitches in 1. Always like hold your working piece here with your fingers, and you are always turning a little bit the hook, you know, like it goes to the back. Then you can more easily do the slip stitch. But you will get into the slip stitches, they're actually quite easy. So increasing row done. Don't forget to move up your stitch marker. And now we're starting with row 1 again. That's what we're counting. Of course, you can also note down how many stitches you really made. So it's how many rows you really made. So it's 16 rows now, plus 1 is 17. No, it's 16 rows now. And now the next one will be row 17. You can write all these details down so you don't lose track, because later you might make a little mistake or something when you're doing the decreases. So it's good to know how many rows you had in total, so you know if you're correct with the decreases. Okay, so this is really crucial with this pattern, to always write everything down, because it can get a little bit tricky. Okay, but it's a beautiful scarf and actually super easy. So now I made row 1, another row 1. Yeah, and you just keep going. Now we already have 4 stitches. You just keep going in the same pattern. Always increase the eighth row on one side only. And now we have 3, 4, 5, 6, and everything is correct because we're ending on the increasing side. Okay, so another 7 rows done. So I can try to see if I can recognize the rows. So this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So this one is not counted. This is row 8 with the increases. So we are counting always these front loops. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and here you have all the stitches because you haven't stitched in them yet. So in the back here. So it's 7 rows. You can actually count them. Okay, so this is the increasing part. I will not continue to do this now. I will just show you the decrease now. The complete scarf will measure 108 centimeters. That means this piece here has to become 54 centimeters long. Okay, so you keep increasing until it's 54 centimeters. Of course, the length always also depends a little bit on the circumference of your neck, so you can try it on, but I think 108 is the ideal length. So you will want to increase until you reach 54 centimeters. And then you start with the decreases. So to decrease, I will of course do the 7 rows and not increase again here, but instead do a decrease at the row 8. Okay, so let's imagine this is 54 centimeters, and now I want to start decreasing. I go in the front loop and in the next front loop, and then I pull through all. I made a decrease, slip stitch decrease, and 2 more stitches, And then you just continue with 7 rows like you did before. Don't forget to mark your stitch. See, this happens to me too, but here you could see it. So okay, so now we make 7 rows. Yeah, and then you just decrease down to 2 stitches at the end. So this was 2. 3. 4. 5. 6. 7. So now I have 7, and I'm gonna decrease. And then we have 2 stitches only left. And then you continue with the 2 stitches until you reach the end. 2, 3. Okay, and now you reach the end. Okay, it's a very petite scarf now, very tiny. And when you reach the end, you are going to crochet all around, slip stitches in the sides of the scarf. Okay, so what you're gonna do, a chain, and now you're slip stitching into the gaps here. Let's try to go into the gaps as pretty as possible. I know it can be a little bit tricky, so actually it's better to go into these smaller spaces here, because otherwise you might have a little bit big holes. So we're gonna try to crochet so we are closing the edge a little bit, so you can see I'm going here in these front stitches and slip stitch, and I'm not going into the whole gap because that would widen everything. We want everything to look very nice. Sometimes you can go on the gap, so just try to make them neat and pretty. And this is how you crochet the edge. This is what it looks like on this side. And that's the back. Actually, I was a little bit too tight here, I think. But maybe it's okay. So we just keep crocheting in the edge. See, now I have gone in the gap here and I have a little hole. Yeah, don't make the slip stitches too tight, but also not too loose. So now I'm here at the end. Gonna make one chain, slip stitch in the front loops here, and then again in the sides, and then I slip stitch back. Yeah, you gotta get a feeling for this whole process. I think this side is a little bit easier. So now I reach the end, and then at the end I make a chain and slip stitch into the first stitch I made. I make a chain and go here, here, and then you're done. So this is the scarf in the mini version. As you can see, it has the highest point in the center. Yeah, that's how you do it. Pretty easy. And this is how the finished version can look like. This one I crocheted with cotton yarn. I think it turned out really well. And yeah, I hope you like this tutorial and are gonna give it a try. I think it's a very cute project. It's quick to make. You can also use some yarn leftovers. Yeah, thank you for watching.